Caroline Cory, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
I should say welcome back.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the third time. And
yes. Third,
there was once was a long time ago when we first talked.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even remember what year. I want to say like 2014 or 13, something like that, way back.
Very possible.
Yeah, I know you do a lot of things. You do a lot of things, so I'm sure it's hard to remember everything. But the last time we talked to you, we had just completed the movie that was out there, Terror in the Sky, which at first I thought it was Tear in the Sky. I'm sure a lot of people say that because either one could sound like it would work. But so just to follow up on that, that was a great movie, by the way. I was jealous you got to interview William Shatner. I mean, amazing man. But I'm not so happy with some of the things he said about UFOs, here and there.
Right.
But for the most part, I really am a big fan. But still, Kevin Knuth, I remember you were still trying to resolve what that thing was. And just the question, the movie's done. It's long, a few years back and all that. Has that ever been resolved, what that was?
No, but that's a good thing. It means that these scientists have done everything possible to debunk it, because actually that's their job. Their job is to figure out what that thing is by making sure it is not a reflection on the camera or some sort of particles, from some sort of solar, ejection or something like that, or even a malfunction of the device, so that's what they do. They go through every single possible thing.
Yes,
and
which is a good thing, like you say.
Exactly. I mean, that's the point of the film, because I'm sure they do that. They analyze footage that's already done, but what we've done in this film is do it live. So there's no cheating, and also there's multiple angles. And so that was the idea of trying to go the extra mile to do it this way. And to this day, they still can't figure out what it is.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so we had the one camera that captured that opening and closing, and then we have the radar that picked up something exactly in that location as well.
Someone in the film you had that I've become pretty good friends with is Dave Mason.
Yes.
He's such a great guy, and what a solid guy, and what a guitar player. Have you ever seen him?
Yes,
he's an amazing guitar player. Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. But you had a lot of really interesting, great people in there in that show, and you had I think the right people that have an open mind. Science is always supposed to have an open mind and move on to the next thing. And like I just saw in Dean Aliotto's film last night, where Kevin Knuth brings this material to be analyzed that may have come from the Trinity site, and basically ends up being terrestrial, and it was just handled the perfect way. Like, well, we have the answer. This is what it is, and not like no fighting it or anything. It's science. It's all science, and that's what it is. And the film showed it, instead of trying to or cutting it out completely because it wasn't dramatic enough. But I think it's always very important to see where science lands things.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, they weren't open-minded.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I mean, they are open-minded in the sense of, yes, we're going to give this a try. But they weren't open-minded in the sense of, oh, we're just going to believe anything. They were actually hardcore scientists on the team. And in fact, for example, you could not mention the C word, as in consciousness, as in CE5. That was sacrilege. It was strictly science, data. So in that sense, they weren't just easily persuaded that it could be this, it could be that, which again, that was the point of the film. Like you're saying, you can appreciate that. If we're going to get real answers, you have to stick to that sort of science,
So you just mentioned a word that I'd like to ask you about, that's consciousness, because there's a lot of people that claim there's a consciousness factor to the encounters.
Yes.
And I've actually had 2 or 3 people on my shows trying to explain exactly what they mean. I still don't quite get it because I don't think we really understand consciousness completely anyway. But I mean, how would you say that there's a connection? And I don't know if this will segue into anything that you're doing, but how would you consider that?
Yes. So actually, what was interesting on set when we were filming A Tear in the Sky, I had Travis Taylor.
Yes.
And Sudeikis. Oh my God.
Matthew.
Matthew,
yes.
And Kevin Knuth.
Great guy.
Yes. And so what happened was Travis Taylor, if you've seen it on the ranch. Skinwalker Ranch. He started out completely skeptical. Like, he was hardcore scientist. He's like, don't even mention anything. But he started to have so many experiences himself and felt things, from invisible, things that would show up, appear, disappear, that he completely changed his outlook on things. And he realized, in fact, he showed me a book that he had written even before, like a long time ago, on consciousness. So here we are on set, and of course I totally believe in consciousness because I'm an experiencer. I've had so many experiences that cannot be explained. And so I'm believing in this, right? And we one of the days they were all in the room, and for some reason that conversation started, and Travis Taylor was saying, well, you are conscious, aren't you? So consciousness exists, But that's where it ends for Kevin Knuth and Matthew. It was more like, okay, we are conscious being, but you cannot prove anything. You cannot prove this or that. And they started this whole debate. I was having a blast. But you're right. At the end of the day, we don't really have a definition of what consciousness is. So of course, I've worked with many different types of scientists. And to me, this is how I define consciousness. From Tom Campbell to Dean Radin to all those scientists who really talk about it. For me, consciousness is, you can think of it as an energy. It's a fundamental energy. When you say fundamental in physics or in science, it means that it's the beginning. If there's such a thing as beginning or before and after, it would be the before of anything. It's fundamental. So imagine this energy that is fundamental at the origin of everything. And from that energy, everything emerges. Einstein said matter is actually energy. So from that fundamental energy, you have the physical world, you have matter, you have stars and planets and living beings, intelligent life in different forms. But at the base of everything is that same substance. That's the reason why up here, we think we're separate. We think, oh, well, I'm a person and here's an animal and here's a planet and here's a star. But we all emerged from the same fabric, that same energy in different format, in different configurations. So we end up appearing different and separate, but it's that same original fabric that connects everything and all of life together. When you look at it from that perspective, then telepathy makes sense. Remote viewing makes sense. UFOs make sense. Because up here we think, oh, how can I communicate? How can I remote view from this point to that point if we're separate? Yes, but you see what I mean? At the root, we're not separate. That fabric continues to connect us all. So that's kind of also, that energy is like a field. So if that field continues to exist at the source of everything, then all of the paranormal starts to make sense.
So do you think in general, as a human species, that we just consider, well, we're intelligent, and so the ant on the ground doesn't have any of this because it's not as intelligent as us. But you're saying that it's all like, it starts at the same level. I heard someone on, I watched a YouTube video on consciousness because I'm trying to understand.
Yes.
And this theorist said that he does believe that he's going to be able to prove I don't know how we will, that trees have consciousness.
Well, it's actually already been proven. You can research there's plants, all plants are sentient beings. It's proven and shown that plants communicate. They talk to each other through the fungal system.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is interconnected through this network. And when you talk, it's funny, I was just talking about this in my previous lecture earlier this afternoon. So what is the difference between you emerge from this consciousness and you're an intelligent being, and then the dog or the ants or whatever? So as I said, when you emerge with a new formula, right? Like you have a certain number of atoms, put together this way, so you in this geometric form, and that's how you appear as a dog, or you appear as this or that. But each time you emerge, it's creation, basically. It's purposeful. It's for a reason. It's not just random stuff. So I feel all the animals are here to work with the planet itself. That's why they're on fours. So they circulate the energy, through their body and back into the earth. So they're working with the pulse and the chemistry of the planet. For example, birds, they're working with the magnetic field of the planet. So each aspect of creation, including trees, including plant life, have specific purpose and specific roles within the overall picture.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned like this, I believe you mentioned energy, that type of thing, but a lot of people are saying there's like a vibration is another aspect of connectiveness. Everything has a vibration to it, whether it's our atoms or molecules or whatever it is, everything's vibrating. And it's so fascinating when you think of the world in like a quantum level, like it should be able to put my finger through this desk, because it's there's so much space there and all that. I know I'm getting a little off topic here, but but as far as do you consider there's vibration as any part of this, or is it a separate thing?
It's not a separate, it's exactly that. Like I said, in fact, I think it's Einstein who said, matter is just energy that is vibrating at a slower rate. So so right now we see the physical world as physical because we're looking through the spectrum of how much the eyes can see, right? We can only see 400 to 700 nanometers, like that much. So anything that vibrates within that range is visible, and it looks static, looks material, because it's vibrating within this slower range that it's almost stable, almost stopped. But in fact, if you look at like under a microscope, for example, we are vibrating at a whole different frequency. When you look under a microscope, the cell is rotating, right? So even on a subatomic level, on a tiny molecular level, the oxygen is vibrating at a certain rate in every cell in your body. The carbon molecule, the nitrogen molecule, whatever. So everything is vibrating. Everything's vibrating. But then all together, it's vibrating within a range that appears material. So that's why there are other things that are in existence that we can't see because they're vibrating higher than what we can see.
I actually am totally on board with that.
Yes.
Because I feel as though we know very little about what's actually going on around us. I've said that many times on my show. Just by, my experience and thoughts. And I don't talk about it too often, but I had what would be considered a poltergeist situation at one time that I could not explain in a million years. But it just made me think about what the heck is really going on around us. It's just on the edge of what we can see. And is it another dimension? Is it, and what would that involve? Or a little time slip or whatever, it's so fascinating to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have so much evidence that there are invisible things that exist, even though we don't see them. In fact, all the waves, sound waves exist. We don't see them. You know, the waves coming from the microwaves are waves, we don't see them. So animals can see certain things that we can't see. They can see in the UV range. We can't see that, but yet there's a whole world that exists. So there's a whole world beyond the human spectrum that continues to be alive and to exist. So the idea, and you know, I don't know if you've seen my film Superhuman.
Nope.
Okay, so in that film, what we've done, we wanted to basically prove that it's the mind, it's the invisible part of you, so to speak, that is having the effect on your body or on the physical world, right? So we cannot measure the invisible because the devices are within the visible range. You see what I mean? Like if the device is within the visible range, you cannot measure the invisible range in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But what we can do, we can measure the effect between the invisible and the visible. So if I can, so for example, I take this glass of water, and it's physical, it's material, right? But my mind is invisible. You can't see my thoughts, right? And so can I, with my thought, look at the water and change the pH of water? Literally invisible, have an effect, a measurable effect of water, because I can measure the pH before and after. Makes sense? So we've done multiple experiments like this on DNA, on water, on moving objects and things like that under laboratory conditions, meaning, you know, you take a baseline, you leave the water for a while, for days, and you know what I mean. Strict laboratory condition, and exactly at the time where I'm talking to the water or focusing on the water, I'm saying, okay, pH change, and it starts to change. Right?
In a lab situation?
In a lab situation. It's in the movie. You should watch it. Yeah. We've done that with DNA. We tried to change the electrical conductivity of DNA, which is very significant. So we've done this experiment multiple times, and basically the DNA sample, we were focusing on it and trying to raise the electricity, basically going through it, the impedance. And every time, again, we measured the baseline, it's not doing anything. And exactly at the time when I say DNA change, boom, it goes up 100%. The first time I did it was 400%. It just like,
wow.
And then when you stop, it goes back down. We did that over and over, control groups, everything else. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I just measured the effect of something invisible on the visible. That we can do. This is proof that there's something over there.
Yeah. I want to tell a personal story, not to me, but a really close friend of mine, because it's always just absolutely baffled me how this happened.
Okay.
She was expecting a baby. She had the baby. The baby came very, very early and was like 1 pound. And they didn't have any hope for the baby at all. So they called her in because they said, he's going to go. And the saline level was just dropping. The saline, it was just going down. And she said, come in and say goodbye. She grabbed a hold of the baby's 2 legs. It said she was just like a little stick from a drumstick, a little tiny little thing. She grabbed a hold of those 2 legs and she prayed and she said, please raise the saline, raise, you know, like that, whatever. The meter started going up. The kid is still alive today.
See?
I mean, it was just, to me, I mean, I cried when she told me that story. And that's why I said, I don't usually talk about personal things, but that was like the first bona fide type miracle I've ever heard of. And this child, he's small and everything, but he doesn't have any health issues, and he made it. And I thought maybe it's the power of prayer. I don't know what it is, but it went up and he lived.
So this is, by the way, there are many examples like this. Maybe not a baby, like a 1 pound baby, but similar things. Yeah. So what is it that we're measuring? We're measuring the effect of consciousness. What is prayer? Is intention, right? She's saying, please, please, she's putting an intention of health, of whatever. So that intention is coming from her consciousness, right? It doesn't matter where, like who she's asking, Archangel Michael or God or Jesus, it doesn't matter. It's her consciousness that's projecting that frequency, that intention of health, of survival, of thriving, right? And that is affecting that frequency of her thought is affecting the chemistry of the baby. Just like this, we just changed the chemistry of the water, the pH, we changed the chemistry. Does that make sense? Is more or less hydrogen molecules. Same thing.
I'm going to send her this video. By the way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's why this is so important, because it's very empowering. If we can do this to water, if we can do this, it means we can heal ourselves.
So I'd like to talk a little bit, if I can. Unfortunately, it has to be a sort of, they need to use this room, so it's going to be kind of a short interview. But as an experiencer, if you can talk a little bit about that, like I want to know, like, what you think it was and when it began.
So for me, it started out when I was 5. I had an experience where I suddenly saw beings in the room. And well, actually, it wasn't like a person standing. It was more of light. And then what happened is I felt like we were merged, like I became in the light and they became, it was kind of one of those feelings of becoming one with something. And all of a sudden I realized we were talking, obviously telepathically. And I remember they were saying that it was kind of like I'm on this side of the veil in a body, and they were like the rest of me, like a stream of consciousness. And I felt like they were my family, kind of. And so they said that's how you communicate. That's how you continue communicating with other realms, And so that was at 5. Of course, I mean, I was like, oh, okay, like you don't have a frame of reference.
Yeah, I know.
You're just like, okay, whatever,
What about your parents? Did you tell your parents? And
I didn't say anything because I thought it was a natural thing, because it felt amazing. It felt comfortable and easy and beautiful. Like it wasn't scary or anything like that. It wasn't like a spaceship or anything. It was just like this organic light something. And so, and familiar. That's the thing. It was familiar. Like I know them. I know this, And so that's why I didn't say anything, because I thought that all children have those experiences. So I didn't think like I was special. I didn't think, like, oh, this happened to me. So I said nothing. It was later that I was like, wait, what was that? Especially that these beings continued to kind of communicate every now and then. So that's how I kind of grew up already with an understanding that there is a whole world that is invisible, but it's very real. And so of course I got to college, and then I was like, well, maybe there's something wrong with me here.
Now, did you talk about it with friends or anything in the interim?
Not like that. But sometimes I would ask, well, are you able to see like what's wrong with this person? Like, because I would like look at someone and I could see like they have a stomach issue or something, or a backache or something, just by looking at them. And so like nobody could. And then I would ask the person, did you have surgery on your shoulder? They're like, yeah, how did you know? Things like that. So I realized like I was doing something, but I didn't know what, So then I started to study like I realized my course in psychology in college didn't help. I mean, it was just like, okay, you're not crazy, move on. So I realized, okay, we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about invisible worlds, we're talking about paranormal, that's what it is. So I spent like 20 years kind of meditating, you know, training myself to understand how it works. Who are these beings? How do I communicate? Like, do I communicate with them like just with a, you know, like a Pleiadian? Like, what's the difference? Am I seeing a flying saucer or, you know, a spaceship, or is that my imagination? You know, like, I would train myself to understand what I was doing, to make sure I wasn't making stuff up. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't projecting. And so it took a long time to train, because then I would have evidence. Like, did I make up that I just saw somebody in the other room write something on a piece of paper, blah, 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 you know, but then I would go and check. You see what I mean? So that's kind of how I trained, and then I would have like a being show up, you know, and we would communicate, you know. And so I learned about the different types of beings this way. And of course, UFOs. UFOs would show up, and then we would communicate. And I was like, did I make this up? But then I'd be like, well, if you can hear me, of course, just communicate, you know, do something. And then they would like split up in two. And then I'd be like, oh, that's cool. Well, what else can you do? And then they would split in four. You know what I mean? So I would have evidence.
Is this like orbs type of thing, or?
That particular incident that I'm telling you about was actually 3 orbs, and they were like bouncing off of each other like this. So I looked at them, I was like, are you? And then they were like, I could hear, yes. You know, I mean, I could sense, you know, that's, and then I'd be like, so how do I know? Then they kept bouncing, and then they split into 4, then it split into 6. And I remember I was in Utah at the time, and I said, okay, that's pretty cool. And then I said, well, if you can hear me, then follow me. So I left the house, and I was like in this community. I started walking like maybe half a mile, and they were literally like, so that's how I would have evidence that there is some sort of connection going on.
Now, was there ever a time where other people were with you and they saw these things too?
Yeah, so actually that story, that same incident. So then I was like, okay, that's cool. And here comes a lady. I remember it's nighttime, like maybe 9 p.m. or something. It was pretty dark. It was in a community. And here comes this neighbor, and she's walking her dog. I was like, perfect. So I said, hey, hi. You know, I said, do you see these things? And then she looks up, and she's like, oh, yeah. That's probably the, like it's like some festival or something downtown, which is like way, you know, like far away.
Like searchlights or something?
Yeah, searchlight.
Yeah.
And I was like, but there is no beams. There's like not these things are like, you know, searchlights don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, and then she goes about her, you know, walking her dog. And then I was like, but look, that don't look like searchlights. And she was like, no, yeah. Like she could not, like she saw them, but for her, like she didn't even want to go there.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's another thing why, you know, some people look at the sky, one person would see something and the other person would see it differently, you know. And there's no beam, there's no searchlight. I mean, it just didn't make any sense. And what searchlight split into 6 and 3 and 4 and then disappear? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's, that story I remember. So things like that. So when you have that, you know, many times during your lifetime, come on, you know, there's something there. You know, we don't know everything, how it works. I'm doing my best to bring some scientific data, like through the movies that I do, at least to find the evidence that there is something happening with that connection from the invisible to the visible. And we just have to keep studying that.
Right. What's on the agenda for anything upcoming besides doing these type of lectures?
Yeah, so I am in the middle of finishing Superhuman 2, which is the sequel of Superhuman. That's where we measure the effects of consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
So I'm doing that. And I'm also, after that, I'm going to finish the sequel of A Tear in the Sky.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was exciting. That I love the fact that you, well, you know, you had such a small period of time to gather something, and there were some things happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we said, you know, what are the odds that exactly in those 5 days, you know, all of this data we were going to collect. And what does that mean? That means, so Travis Taylor, I remember we were having this conversation right after.
Yeah.
And he said the fact that we collected so much data in these 5 days tells us two things. Either one, it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
It's happening all the time because most of the data we collected also was in the FLIR cameras, which is the high infrared range. So the high infrared range, you cannot see in the naked eye. This means that this stuff is happening all the time. We're just, you know, nobody's walking around with FLIR cameras. You know what I mean?
Right. I've often wondered what it would be like, you know, when I'm in a place where I see a nice open sky, like if a camera had, or someone was looking up, say for 50 years straight, what they would see in that amount of time. I know they would see something, you know, in that maybe a very short amount of time. But I'm just saying a random area of just plain looking up, you know, because I've spent, you know, my encounter that I had, I was in a hot tub, and then I've had other situations in a hot tub. I mean, I saw the most amazing fireball. I've talked to people like Mark D'Antonio about it because it just was so amazing. And I talked about it once on my show, described it very well. And someone from Nova Scotia said was that in the mid 80s? I said, yes, their grandparents saw.
Wow.
They described about the same thing. So, but anyway, I'm digressing here, but thank you so much. And thank you for the work you do. And I'm glad you're, you know, a lot of times people think, well, these people can go kind of fringe or whatever, but you know, you take the time and have a scientific approach to the things. I think that's very admirable, and not just, you know, trying to get views or whatever. Like you're at least, you know, taking that approach. So I do appreciate that.
I'm doing my best. Thanks so much. Appreciate it very much.
Yes, very good. Take care now.
Thank you.